Welcome to the Taste Test channel, and in this video we'll be taking an impartial look at popular mayonnaise from around the world to discover how some of the best-selling varieties around the globe differ in taste. In our lineup today we have the #1 mayo on the planet, Hellmanns of the USA, also known as Best Foods. The top seller of a nation who are mayonnaise crazy, D L from Belgium. The product that converted the Far East into mayonnaise lovers, Kewpie of Japan. A household favourite in Scandinavia, Swiss super brand Tomy. The beloved choice of a country who claim the condiment as their own invention, Benedicta of France. And finally, long-established Dutch brand Calvary from the Netherlands. As always, just for fun, we'll be awarding our Taste Test Channel Best in Class Award to the winner, and if you're new to the channel, just hit subscribe and ring that bell so you don't miss any of our regular taste tests. So, who exactly invented mayonnaise? Well, that's been an argument between the French and Spanish for centuries. It's commonly believed to have originated in the town of Mayo, which is the capital of Spanish island Minorca, and which was captured by the French in 1756. Now, the French say that the chef preparing the victory feast improvised an egg-based sauce using local olive oil instead of cream, and was so pleased with the result, he named it mayonnaise after the defeated town and took the recipe back to France. The Spanish, however, say he just nabbed the idea from their already existing local recipe. Whatever the truth of the matter, one thing's certain, it's consumed in vast quantities worldwide, most reverently in Belgium, where the king actually decrees the recipe, and in the highest quantities in Russia and Ukraine, where it's added to almost everything. Now, for this test, we're sticking with original versions rather than low-fat, so as to assess the full, unadulterated taste. Obviously there's loads out there to choose from and we can't include them all, but our lineup here includes some of the most popular and iconic around the globe. So moving on to price, and these all fell into a fairly affordable category, but the cost to get hold of them may differ depending on where you're based. The amount in each jar varies, so you can see the price that I paid per 100 grams is shown below. As you can see, Kewpie from Japan was the most expensive, but import costs may have played a part, and global brand Hellmanns of the USA was the cheapest. Nutritional-wise, this is interesting because unlike many foods, a high percentage of fat is commonly considered to be essential to the quality of the product. Mayonnaise is, after all, just fat, egg and vinegar, with seasonings. So it's not the healthiest of products, although there are plenty of low-fat options now available. The chart below lists the brands from top to bottom in energy content per 100 grams. As you can see, D L from Belgium has the most energy and Calvary from the Netherlands has the least. Fat content shows Thomy from Switzerland and D L have the most fat, and Calvary again has the least. The good news, however, is that most of these brands are using rapeseed oil, also known as canola oil, which has one of the lowest saturated fats of all oils, although this may vary depending on which country you buy the product in. Sugar is fairly low on all 6 brands, no more than 2%. And finally, salt content is also pretty low but varies across the brands, with Kewpie having the most and Calvary having the least. But how will all of this affect the taste? Well, that's why we're here. So we're going to start our test with the best-selling mayonnaise on the planet, Hellmann's, from the US, which depending on where you live in the world and whether you're east or west of America's Rocky Mountains, you'll either know this as Hellmann's or as Best Foods. They're effectively the same product. Richard Hellmann and his wife first developed their creation in their New York deli in 1905. It became so popular with their customers, they started selling it in bulk, and within 10 years they'd sold their store and built a factory. Meanwhile, Californian company Postum Foods, later Best Foods, was selling their own recipe and dominating the West Coast. So when they bought the Hellmann's brand in 1927, they decided to keep both brands alive. Originally, they were different recipes, but according to the owners, for at least 20 years, they've been essentially the same product with the same ingredients, although some say that Best Foods is slightly more tangy. They've been owned by Unilever since 2000. By the way, all their mayo uses eggs that are either cage-free or free-range. So what we're going to do is open all the pots first so we can compare them visually side by side, and then we'll move on to the tasting. So let's open up the jar and serve some out. So a fairly thick and slightly gelatinous consistency, a bit like stiff whisked egg whites. The aroma's quite buttery, with a hint of white vinegar. And I'll look forward to tasting it after we've opened the others. Next, Belgium's #1 brand, Devos Lemmens, or D&L. Now, Belgium takes its mayonnaise super seriously. It's part of their culture, so much so that in 1955, the King of Belgium decreed that to be even called mayonnaise, it must contain 80% fat and 7.5% egg yolk. Per person, Belgians are one of the biggest consumers of mayo globally. D&L formed in 1886 when Mr. Devos married Miss Lemmens, and together started creating pickles and mustards. Later this evolved to mayo, which became their flagship product. By the way, Belgium has now slightly relaxed its ingredients laws simply to compete with foreign brands, but D&L here is still prepared to a traditional Belgian recipe, with 81% oil. You'll find it sold in 70 countries. The eggs listed on this one are barn eggs, which means they are cage-free, but don't roam outdoors. So let's take a look inside and spoon some out. So more of a pale yellow colour, with a softer feel and a smooth glossy surface. The aroma is also very different, acidic, like a high-pitched astringent spirit vinegar. And we'll see how acidic it really is in the tasting section. Next, Japan's best-selling brand, Kewpie, who are entirely responsible for making mayonnaise a household product in Japan. In 1925, mayo was more or less unheard of. Enter Toichiro Nakashima, who, drawing on inspiration from time he'd spent in the US, started producing Japan's first ever mayonnaise. Although it's a Japanese product, I was surprised to find that this figure here is in fact based on the popular American Kewpie doll, from which he took the name and promoted his recipe as a nutritious accompaniment to traditional Japanese cuisine. Over time, it's become a daily essential product and has remained Japan's top seller. Kewpie actually create their own unique vinegar, made from rice or sake leaves, grain and apple cider. Today, it's popular worldwide. By the way, Kewpie has only recently, for the first time ever, started using cage-free eggs for their US products. But focusing on taste alone, let's take off the wrapper and squeeze some out. So a smooth custardy feel again, and an even richer colour, but quite a different aroma. To me, it really smells like an egg mayo sandwich. A strong, fresh egg smell with mild vinegar acidity in the background. So I'll be very curious to try it. Next, the bestseller from Switzerland, Tomy, which has also been voted year on year as being in the top 20 Swiss brands of anything. The company began in 1907 as the country's first commercial mustard producer, and within a few years were selling millions of products. In 1930 they adopted the name Thomy after one of the company's founders, who introduced their distinctive aluminium tubes, and in the 50s they began selling this mayonnaise. Today, every Swiss household eats an average of 5 tubes of this a year, and you'll also find it around Europe. They've been owned by Nestlé since 1971. Tomy's website states that wherever possible, they use organically certified ingredients, including free-range eggs. So we'll open it up and see what we've got. So similar to Hellmann's in look and texture, paler and stiffer than many of the others, but still with a creamy feel. The aroma, however, is more like the Belgian D&L, very high-pitched, almost acerbic spirit vinegar. Next, one of France's leading and most beloved brands, Benedicta. Their beginnings date back to 1907, when Frenchman Prosper Riekman bought a vinegar company, and a few years later adopted a name inspired by the purity and craftsmanship of the Benedictine monks. Today, Benedicta is a household staple, with a range of sauces and mustards, all produced in France. It's been a subsidiary of Kraft Heinz since 2008. Pleased to say 100% of their eggs are free-range. So let's open up the pot and take a closer look. Okay, so a much deeper yellow colour and the consistency of thick whipped cream. The slightest hint of graininess visible in the texture and tiny flecks of pepper. The aroma is strong egg, vinegar and very definite mustard tones. So I'll be really curious to taste it. Finally, from the Netherlands, Dutch brand Calvary, which was originally a merger between 2 Dutch and French oil mills in 1898. The company went from strength to strength across Europe, producing vast quantities of margarine, soaps and salad oils. And in 1928 they were brought into the fold as one of the founding members of what would become food giant Unilever. Today, Calvary Mayonnaise is widespread across Europe. Eggs used in this brand are happily free range. So let's open up the jar and serve some out. So the thinnest and sloppiest of the group, but still creamy, smooth and glossy. The aroma is much more subtle. I'm not getting a lot off it. Slight egg tones, but not much else. But we'll see how it actually tastes in just a moment. So looking at them all side by side always makes any differences a lot more obvious, and you can see just how much mayonnaise does vary. Hellmann's is both the palest and the thickest in texture, closely followed by Tomy from Switzerland. Benedicta from France is the darkest with an almost mustard yellow colour, and Calve from the Netherlands is the runniest. But with all that in mind, I'm now especially curious to discover just how much they're going to vary in taste. Now, mayo goes well on so many things, from salads to burgers, meat, fish, and of course it's a massive favourite on fries. Personally, I'm also rather partial to dipping potato wedges in it, and I thought that would be ideal for today's test. So let's rustle some up. And now that we have our wedges, let's move on to the tasting. So we'll start with the global favourite, Hellmann's. So a creamy consistency and a rich buttery taste. The flavours are quite subtle, a slight sharpness of white vinegar, hint of white pepper, but mostly a neutral creamy butteriness. In all, it makes for a mayo that would go well with anything. It seems to enhance rather than distract from whatever you pair it with. Next we'll try D L from Belgium. Wow, so a richer, more oily mouthfeel and silky smooth. The flavour's very different, more complex. It's piquant and acidic. You could almost think there's capers in there. Also American-style mustard tones. It's like a mix of good quality mayo with good quality salad cream, but it really works. Its tangy kick would lift sandwiches and go amazingly well with steak. Next we'll try Japanese favourite Kewpie. So an oily custard-like creaminess and a different flavour again, a lot more eggy, and then the deeper earthy acidity of brown malt vinegar. I can't detect apple or sake tones, but there's a mild hint of mustard in the finish. Overall, very rich and eggy, but a great flavour. It may feel a little heavy after a while with fattier food, but the malt vinegar gives it a distinctive lift, and it would go exceptionally well with light fish dishes. Next we'll try Thomy from Switzerland. So much more like Hellmann's again, with those neutral buttery flavours, but even creamier and oilier. It's also more acidic, with strong white vinegar tones adding a long aftertaste, together with oil and a hint of pepper at the back of the throat. Just like Hellmann's, this would pair with all sorts of food. It's heavier and fattier, but with a sharp kick that would stand out particularly well in sandwiches and salads. Next we'll try Benedicta from France. So a creamy custard-like consistency, similar to D L and Kewpie, but less oily. There's extra body though in the flavour, obvious egg tones, sharp vinegar acidity, but also mustard, specifically French Dijon, with a peppery kick in the finish. Very nice. This would pair really well with meats and sandwiches alike. Finally, we'll try Calve from the Netherlands. So a thinner and more watery feel, and the most different in flavour from Hellmann's. Egg mayo based flavours, but it tastes like it's been mixed with gherkin water or pickle juice, so much less fatty and quite tangy. Very different. Some might find it too thin, but it's not at all bad. If it's what you're used to, I think you'd really miss the pickly tang that's just not there in other mayos. And it would go brilliantly in a burger. So that covers how they all differ in taste, and now for our winners and Best in Class award. I have to say, for this test, there's no duds here. I'd happily have all 6 of these mayos in my fridge, and I'd definitely reach for each one at different times to go with different foods. By the way, my perfect pairings for each of these might be something like this. But let us know your favourite mayo combos in the comments. So picking the top 3 this time is especially difficult. There's no right or wrong here, but after much deliberation and far too much mayo consumption, our top 3 winners are as follows. Winning 3rd place, Benedicta from France. A dynamic mix of flavours and not too heavy. I'll definitely be reaching for this one regularly, and the mustard kick adds a unique peppery finish. Winning 2nd place, Hellmanns of the USA. Whilst the flavours are much more subtle, I completely get why this is the global favourite. It really does work well with anything, and it's also the one I found I could eat the most of. It's creamy but not heavy. But in 1st place this week in the popular mayonnaise from around the world, the Taste Test Channel Best in Class award goes to D L from Belgium. This one had the biggest instant wow factor for me. It is literally silky smooth, and I love the piquant tang. It's not too eggy, it cuts through burgers and subs, and made me eat far too many fries and wedges. Delicious. The Belgians certainly seem to know their mayonnaise, so well done to Devos Lemmens of Belgium. And as always, taste is subjective, and this is purely my point of view, but I hope it's provided some useful insights. By the way, just a point of note, we purposely tried the originals of each brand here, but it's worth checking out their lower fat versions. You may lose 20% or so of the flavour, but given that you cut out as much as 60% of the fat and the energy, it's a sacrifice worth considering. So I really hope you've enjoyed watching this episode. If you have, do check out our other taste tests, and a massive thank you from me to all you wonderful people who like, comment, support and share our videos with fellow food fans. It really does make all the difference. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to ensure you don't miss any of our regular taste tests. Meanwhile, thanks for watching. I'm struggling with a mayonnaise related send-off, but Mayo, your dreams come true, and I'll see you next time.